Conscious birth. Guys, I actually just want to get started right now because I am so excited about this week's episode. We have two wonderful guests. First, hi, baby.
Hi, I'm back.
You are back. I don't think you need any introduction.
No?
No? But who are you? You're the mom.
Your baby mum.
And Elise Tobias.
Hello.
I got it right.
You got it right, Danny.
Beautiful,
Good job.
beautiful. And Elise is our doula, right? And so I have learned so much about birth, especially in comparison. I'm obviously an experienced father. I have 3 beautiful boys. And thinking about who I am today and what I've learned today and the preparation that we've been through in order to welcome our little girl, compared to who I was in the past, I thought to myself, at least like everyone has got to hear this stuff, because I feel like a lot of the woundings, the traumas that we as human beings experience, some of it happens in birth. So welcome.
A lot. Thank you, Danny.
Yeah.
It's funny you say that, actually, because my mum's birth with me was an emergency cesarean. So I grew up hearing I was in a 3-day long labour and then eventually you were born by cesarean. And it's funny that you say, you know, what we hear as young as 4, 5, 6, it then influences the rest of your life and the stories and the narrative that you know about birth. So absolutely, when I first found myself pregnant, I thought it's going to end in an emergency cesarean. It's going to be a 3-day long labour ending in a cesarean.
Yeah.
And then it was only then really doing the research in my own pregnancy 6 years ago, first time, that I was like, hang on a second, this is not how it's always been.
Right.
And yeah, that's what got me started.
Well, then I want to know about that. So you were just sharing with Jen that you used to be in TV.
I did, yeah.
And now you're a doula.
Yes.
Right? Which a lot of people don't even know what a doula is. So let's start with that. What is a doula and what called you to this work?
So a doula, put very, very simply, is a professional birth partner. So it's someone who is trained normally in childbirth education, who then accompanies a couple throughout the pregnancy. So it's not just someone who's with you on the day you go into labour, but as we're experiencing, it's someone who you work with in your pregnancy. So you develop this real trust factor. And most importantly, as I'm sure we're going to get to, you'll feel safe with me. I'll feel safe with you. We'll get to know each other really well, which means that then when Jen does go into labour, whenever baby's ready, whenever that time is, that when I join you, when you've got familiar people with you, Jen can just further relax and go into labour. So that's kind of what a doula does. So it's someone who supports throughout the whole pregnancy, birth, and then in the initial postpartum period as well. In terms of me, how I got into this work, as you said, I used to work in television. So I was in TV for about, 8 years. I was working on the international production of lots of different TV shows. My big one was MasterChef, but another one that I worked on was One Born Every Minute.
Oh my goodness. Wow.
Have I not told you this?
No.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so let's rewind. So I was working on MasterChef, I was working on One Born Every Minute, and my role was to bring in kind of all of the international versions, make sure that the brand values were upheld around the world, that the Croatian producers had the format Bible, knew how to produce the show, same for, the producers all around the world in the Middle East, in Asia, etc. So that was the team I was on, international formats. And so obviously, in addition to knowing I was born by emergency cesarean, birth is awful, I also had a phobia of needles, so that didn't help. And then, but by the time I'd got pregnant, I had seen probably 400 or 500 episodes of One Born Every Minute.
Wow. That makes sense.
So you can imagine the narrative in my little brain when I was first pregnant was, this is a disaster. So then let me take you to this really pivotal moment, which was when I was newly pregnant. An episode of One Born Every Minute came through to us, and it was a UK episode, this one. And I remember it really clearly. The first birth that came through on this new cut of a new season was the most beautiful, calm, magical birth. This woman coming in, first baby, going into a birth centre, going into a pool and birthing her baby. And then a few weeks later, that episode airs on Channel 4 and that birth is gone. And I'm like, hang on, what happened there? Where's that one gone? oh, it was edited out because it wasn't dramatic, it wasn't interesting.
Wow.
And this is what's
got
so important to
goosebumps.
understand, right? Is that birth on TV, it needs to be dramatic or interesting or something needs to happen. But most of the time, when you've got a healthy mum having a healthy baby, birth is really boring. Not a lot actually happens, and it can be quite slow. It can be long. It's not something that just, as you see in kind of the movies, waters break and the next thing she's pushing.
Right.
That very, very rarely happens. It can happen. It's called a precipitous labour if it does happen, where a labour is from start to finish in under 3 hours in a first-time mum. But that's so super rare. But yeah, that's kind of what we see on TV. It's either so fast or so long, ending in loads of trauma, right?
And pain.
And pain. Yeah. Oh, you want to talk about the P word already?
Yeah.
I just want to say before, do you know what's so crazy is that it's like the TV channel thinks no one wants to see that. But every pregnant woman sitting at home wants to see the calm, magical birth. So they've cut it out thinking this isn't dramatic enough. There's not enough fear. There's not enough pain. There's not enough drama. And we're probably at home thinking, just show me one that it looks fine.
So that I can know that I'm
Yeah,
gonna
I
be
know
okay.
it's possible.
And that's why you watch those programs, right? Because you're trying to prepare yourself. Because like whenever any human does anything unknown, you're always going to seek out, what have other people done? What can I teach myself so that my brain knows what to do? And
Mad.
that's part of this massive problem.
I have to mention, we're ayahuasca and ceremonies because it's a big part of, our story. But it reminds me of like what people do when they're going to go into journey with the medicine. It's like they're searching everywhere and like no one tells you it's the most beautiful experience you could ever imagine. Everybody is like, oh, it's terrible. I had a bad trip and I was throwing up. And so the people go, throwing up. No, I'm not going to do that. Right. But they don't understand what the throwing up is for. They don't understand how beautiful it is to actually let go of all of that energy, right? And so I got to ask you now, prior to this, what was your thought process around birth?
I think because of the way that we found out that I was pregnant, it was like I never really got a chance to even think what I thought about it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It was like when you're trying to get pregnant, often I think that comes with what's it going to feel like to be pregnant? What's birth going to be like? But I didn't have that phase pre-finding out we were pregnant.
Right.
So then I was already pregnant and then I was just like, okay. And the first thing that I read was Labour Like a Goddess, which I don't... Have you heard of Labour Like a Goddess?
I haven't heard of that one. I have to add that to my reading.
Yeah, it's the most beautiful book all about the deep spiritual process of labour. So then already I was straight onto, oh my goodness, there's all this fear around giving birth that's so systematic. It's so cultural, societal beliefs about birth being this really scary, painful thing. But it doesn't have to be. And look at like all the alternatives and all the ways you can view it different. So that's kind of how I feel like I entered in.
Yeah. So I want to ask you, do you want to describe what happened in the journey? Would it be this episode or our?
I think this is for future.
This is for future. Okay. Because she had a magical experience the week prior to us finding out that we were pregnant.
Yeah.
So I want to ask you this question. That book, as you were reading it, I can tell you were getting downloads, like big time downloads. What's the number one thing that you received like from that book about labor?
That there's nothing to fear.
Okay.
It's the most natural thing a woman can do is to give birth. There's nothing, as you always tell us, there's nothing medical or, unless it becomes that way, but there's nothing medical, scary about it. This is what I am designed in my bones to do. Get pregnant and give birth. I am so capable of doing that.
That's right. I love that. Elise, do you feel like, I feel like we had this moment where we were talking about pain.
Hmm.
And I forgot what you asked me, but you asked me a question and you were like, oh my God, nobody ever gets that. But do you remember what question that was? It was about why do you think it, oh, surrender.
Yes.
Like the fear,
It was
pain.
yes, so my question was, if the uterus, which is the muscle that's going to be working out and doing all of the contracting in labor, my question was to you, if the uterus is simply a muscle performing exactly as it's designed to do when Jen's going to be in labor, why then do the majority of women experience so much horrendous, like awful pain? And I was saying I would never deny that that's their experience, because it is, but why? Why are they experiencing that kind of pain where they are saying like it's the worst pain of your life? And you got it in one, Danu.
That's right.
And you got it in one because you said, because the muscle's tense.
Right.
It's like, yeah.
Yeah.
Have you done this before?
Well, it was, I think I said something about like surrender. What-
Resistance.
Resistance. That's what I said.
Yes, resistance.
Don't
Yeah.
worry, guys, I'm here all day.
Thank you, Jen.
Well, you know where I got that from, Elise, is like what's been really trippy for me in this whole process has been like us realizing how birth is literally like a journey with the medicine.
Because it's an altered state of consciousness.
Bingo.
Because when you have a physiological labour, i.e. Jen goes into labour naturally, then naturally there's going to be this build-up of hormones. And these hormones, including oxytocin and beta endorphins, are going to be rising and rising as she progresses through labour. And what those hormones do is they switch off neocortical functioning. They switch off the thinking brain and they take you into your subconscious. They take you into that limbic system, into the place of, your mammalian brain, your subconscious brain, the place of habit, instinct, creativity. And it's when you kind of drop down into that part of the brain. And we were saying that for so many people, they've never had that experience where they have ever gone to that place. Certainly I hadn't until I had my first labour experience, which is, I'm sure, why it was so transformational for me, because I had prepared that I wasn't going to be the same person as I normally am as when I'm in labour. And I was okay with dropping into that space. But for so many people, they don't even know that that's going to come. So then it becomes quite frightening if all of a sudden you just feel overwhelmed by these hormones and you don't know what's happening and you don't know where you're going. And then that's where, for a lot of people, a lack of continuity in the system, in their care providers, the medical model, medical management, the fact that for a lot of women, especially in America and becoming more and more so in the UK as well, whether you are actually high risk or low risk, you're still going into a hospital and you're often going into a labour ward. And therefore, everyone managing kind of birth on a labour ward, they're trained in obstetric emergencies or things that could go wrong. They're trained in where the path deviates from normal. And where we've got someone like Jen, we've got a healthy mum having a healthy baby, the likelihood of Jen's physiology working is 90+% likely. So if we know that that's the stat and that comes from the World Health Organization, then why is it then that almost 90% of women have intervention in their birth? It doesn't align, and it's because of the system that we've gone into. So it's a really tricky one, because I am not at all kind of denying that the medical system has its place and is brilliant when necessary. But the problem is that for so many low-risk healthy mums having healthy babies, they don't need the model of care that they're given, and that model of care disrupts their physiology. So then we have a disruption of the hormones alongside perhaps, the societal fear. And if a woman hasn't, I call it brain dump, if you haven't brain dumped what's going on up here, like what you know of birth. For me, if I take it back to, what I knew 400 episodes of One Born every minute. I needed to really rewire my brain. I needed to watch a lot of positive stories. I needed to do so much reading in order to kind of reprogram my brain to expect something different. But if you don't have that knowledge, then how are you going to know to do that?
Mm-hmm. Do you have anything to add?
No, go ahead.
I want to bring up, I feel as though, and I know this is a little bit of a touchy subject, I want to bring it up just because it feels as though, and again, I'm coming from the perspective of like, the first times that I experienced, pregnancy and delivery to like who I am now as an individual. But it feels as though, especially with younger parents, like, you're thrust into this system, and like they tell you what to do, right? Whether you need it or not, whether it's medication or especially in America, right? I think we mentioned or you told us one in I don't know how many women now are having cesareans and are induced in their labor, and maybe they don't even need that, right?
Yeah, we're approaching 50%.
50%.
Especially if you combine inductions with cesarean birth, whether that's elective cesareans or emergency, yeah, for sure. The natural kind of vaginal delivery rate is declining year on year in Western societies.
Yeah. And the reason why I bring that up is because we were joking earlier. We just did our final doula class or session. I don't know what you want to call it. But I started asking very serious questions because in my heart, this is going to sound weird, I don't even feel like we need a doctor. I really don't. I feel confident in us and in your ability, baby, to breathe, and all the work you've done in yoga and all the work we've done with the medicine. I literally see us giving birth to the baby, and if we need the doctors, you just sit right there.
Your doctor's a great insurance policy.
That's what I feel.
So the thing with your doctor is that you get on really well. You have a mutual respect and trust and understanding. But yeah, in a healthy mum having a healthy baby, your doctor is a fantastic insurance. If Jen happens to fall into the 10% where maybe Jen, you need some help, or because there are so many variables in labour. So, it's one of the mysteries, and I think one of the beauties of labour is you never quite know what you're going to get. You can never predict. If I had a crystal ball and I could tell you, as I said, Jen, when it's going to begin, etc., I would love to be able to tell you, but only your baby knows. Mm-hmm. And because there are so many variables involved, the likelihood is you continue to kind of tune in, you move instinctively, you let labour start spontaneously, baby stays in a really great position, you're feeling safe, you're feeling relaxed, you let your body take over, you're going to give birth to your baby. Mm-hmm. But I guess your doctor's there in case of any changes to that. And because there are so many variables, what we haven't done in our classes together is me sit down and tell you all the different things that could happen, because what would be the point in me preparing your brains for all of the potential what ifs? No, what I need to do is sit with you, understand both of your fears, worries, anything that could trigger that hormone adrenaline, so that we can make sure that doesn't crop up to create the resistance in the muscle in labour. And then we need to trust that should there be a deviation from a normal physiological labour, that's where your doctor can step in and help you out. But it's unlikely to be kind of necessary as we are currently.
I love that.
Yeah, and I was going to say, when we were deciding between home birth, hospital birth, all of those kind of things.
We went through
we went
a
through
little
that.
Journey.
Which do we choose? Because it feels like the more conscious thing to do is to give birth at home and all of that. I remember coming to a conclusion together of, I just want to feel safe. I just want to feel calm and safe. So in which environment for my first birth am I going to feel the most calm and safe? And because there's so many unknowns, because I've never done this before, it feels like it's okay to be in a hospital and feel safe
for sure
there. And that's why it's kind of cropping up that do we need the doctor? We might not, but we feel safe knowing that if there's any ounce of panic that comes into my brain, I know he's there. So then the panic doesn't even happen, because you've kind of covered all your bases.
Yeah.
Because if something were to happen, we'd be covered. And the fact that we're covered means it probably doesn't happen in the first place.
And I want to honor you for that, baby, because I know this is part of the conscious community. It's because you're conscious, you have a home birth, right? And there's this thing where you this is just what you do, and it's almost comes from this energy of battling the system a little bit. And I would say that in America, I could see why. But one of the things that I have found in London is we would go to your appointments, and this system here, the NHS, has literally, it has your entire life's record from the moment you were born. this is I've never seen that, right? So I want to, what did it feel like as a woman, as a mother, to be able to have that type of confidence to say, hang on, like, this is what I need. And as a result, this is what I choose, you know?
Yeah, it just came to me that me choosing to have a home birth because of like the conscious pressure of having a home birth is the exact same decision of having a hospital birth because of normal societal pressure. So I had to take a step back from both of them and say, where will I feel the most calm? And then it was easy because it was like, yeah, I've never done this before. I don't know what I'm going to go through. I don't know all the routes I'm going to go down or all the possibilities that may happen. But I know that if I'm in a space where I feel safe, those things probably won't happen. So me knowing myself, being aware of what my fears, doubts, worries are, allow me to say, no, my conscious decision is having a birth in a hospital. Who knows what will happen? Please God, the universe gives us another baby and another baby. Who knows what that decision is the next time? But this birth feels so right to be in the hospital.
I love that.
That we chose in London.
Yeah,
Everything
and what
just
were you
feels...
saying to me, Jen, about when you went to that hospital, how you feel? Like you were describing like walking down the corridor.
Yeah.
And like being like, I'm so happy there. I'm so calm. It's so peaceful.
Yeah.
Like you felt so aligned with that place, with that decision, with that particular doctor. Like it all just, yeah, ducks in a row.
But you're so right. I think I just kept listening. I knew that when we were in America, when I would go to the appointments, I didn't feel
right.
good. And that's what made me think, maybe I should have the baby at home. That's what, in America. When we knew we were coming to London and I was going to go to the hospital that we're going to have the baby at, I always felt so calm there.
Yeah. And can we talk about, Jen, when you and I first had our conversation on the phone?
Yeah.
And you were, I said to you, actually, I said, why do you want a doula? Right? What do you want a doula for? And like, have you heard about doulas and so on? And we had that whole chat. And then your answer to my why do you want a doula is because you said, I need someone to like advocate for me. And because, you know, I might have to make decisions that are against hospital. And I went, whoa, if that's how you feel that you're going to be having to make decisions against everyone, that's not what you want. Because at that point you were still looking for the right medical care provider. And that's why we had that little chat. And I said, listen, like when you go into these meetings with these doctors, see how you feel. You don't want it to be a fight. You want it to be collaboration. You want it to be like the 2-3 of you, like working as a team, that you feel like your doctor's totally on your side, who understands your preferences and is going to be able to optimize you having the birth that you would like to have. And that was an interesting decision because it flipped, I think, in your mindset.
Definitely.
Oh, okay.
Do you know?
And then that's what we attracted, babe.
Yes. It's so funny you said that because as you guys were talking, that moment came to me of the flip side of this conscious space about birth, about like fighting the system. My Instagram is filled with, don't go to the hospital, don't do this. Actually invoked the fear in me that if I did go to the hospital, I was in for a battle. So then when you said to me, but why do you want a doula? I said, because I'm gonna need someone to advocate for me. And you were like, why would you need that, Jen? It's not a battle. They're all on your team. Yeah. Everyone in the room should be on your team.
Yeah. And don't get me wrong, Jen, sometimes it can feel like that. But in the kind of route you're going down, you were going down the route where you can choose who you wanted to have on your team. So therefore, the energy that you were going into those meetings with had to be, are you the right fit for us? Are we the right fit? Are we the right clients for you? And are you the right doctor for us? And make sure that was like mutually aligned so that you didn't feel like you're going in, but your doctor doesn't want anything to do with your preferences.
He's going to give you a C-section regardless.
Yeah, but like I see it happen, unfortunately, where, I have clients, they'll come to me and we'll kind of go through a program together, and then they'll be booked in with certain doctors, unfortunately. And I know that they routinely schedule inductions at 39 weeks just because that's how those doctors operate. And so, for want of a better word, so like that was what like your chance to actually make sure that wasn't the kind of way of this doctor, which is what you found, which is great.
Yeah.
Elise, go ahead.
No, that was just the big flip for me. That why do I think that I'm going into battle?
But that's Instagram, isn't it? That's social media, and and absolutely, like, to validate those women who have experienced that is their truth for a lot of them.
For sure.
And it depends on which system you're going into.
That's what I was going to say.
And the luck of the draw of who you get on the day if you are in a public healthcare system. Absolutely. But yeah, because you're doing things slightly differently, it just means that you are aligning your team of people. And so therefore you had the choice, the power to make sure that this felt right. And that's what you've done, which is then, Jen, coming back to your feeling of safety in that place with that doctor, and that it just feels in your bones like the right decision.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Elise, one of the game changers for us was you showing us that video of the sheep having the baby.
I'm so glad you just brought that up, because I was thinking, please talk about the sheep.
We have to. Guys, Elise showed us this video. You have to understand this, like understand all of the programming around labor, all of the, the fear and the anxiety. And as a result of that, the pain, the immense amount of pain, not to say you wouldn't feel pain, but Elise, you show us this video of a sheep having a baby, and the sheep is just like walking around. It's having a little snack, it's finding its little place. It lays down. Next thing you know, the baby pops out. It looks back. It's just chilling. And then, like, you taught us so much about how we as human beings are just like the sheep having the baby, other than what goes on up here.
Totally.
So I just want you to flow, give it all to us when it comes to the sheep, the baby, us. Yeah.
Okay. So I'm aware that sometimes when I show the sheep video, people are going to think, oh, this hypnobirthing is really hippie. This is really weird. But as you summarized it there beautifully, Danny, but it is essentially that the reason I show a mammal, a sheep, giving birth whenever I'm teaching expectant parents is because I want everyone to understand that the hormones produced when a sheep is in labor, a cow, a dog, a cat, or Jen, are identical. So we know that hormonally, as placental mammals, which we are, we've been giving birth for 63 million years. It's a really, really long time. And up until 10,000 years ago, we've been doing that in caves, in the wild, not in civilization. And only in the last 10,000 years has birth moved, into homes. And then, of course, in the last 200 years into hospitals. So what's really important is if we zoom out and we kind of rewind a little bit, we understand, okay, so why is it that mammals, sheep, dogs, cats, they seem to give birth so easily, and yet us as humans, we find it so hard. What is going on here? And that's where I find it absolutely fascinating to look at the hormones and to look at, so what are the hormones then? We know there are loads of hormones involved in the process of labour and birth, but some of the key ones are oxytocin, melatonin, endorphins, estrogen. Like, these are all massive influences when it comes to birth. So looking at oxytocin, if we just spend a bit of time on this hormone for a minute, oxytocin, when you're not in labour, it's the hormone of love, trust, connection, well-being. It's the tingly hormone. It's the falling in love hormone. It's the, that hormone that makes us feel really good. So isn't it funny how the hormone that makes us feel good is the same hormone that initiates labour and that will build as a labour progresses? You cannot be in labour without this hormone, oxytocin. And oxytocin, it's produced in the brain. And what happens is, the brain of Jen, the brain of a sheep, the oxytocin will increase towards the end of the pregnancy. At the same time, the uterus of any mammal, but let's just take Jen for now. Jen's uterus is going to get more and more oxytocin receptor sites kind of planted all over it. as the labour nears, as the baby gets more and more ready. And then it will kind of cross a threshold. So when, Jen, you go into labour, the oxytocin will be pulsated out from the pituitary gland in your brain, and it's going to connect to the receptor sites on your uterus, causing your uterus to contract. So that's what we know the muscle does and what the hormone does. So then if we strip it back and go, okay, so when does oxytocin really flow? When we're in bed, when it's dark. It doesn't flow, as I mentioned, when mother-in-law walks in the room, or it doesn't flow when, you're interrupted. I see it in labour where a woman can be in her zone, doing her thing. She's progressing really, really beautifully through her labour. And then suddenly a door slams and everything stops. And then it can take a while to get back in the flow. And that's because oxytocin is a really, really shy hormone, which it doesn't just come out like, on kind of demand. It takes the right environment, and it fundamentally requires a woman or a mammal to feel safe, to feel relaxed, to feel private, and ideally quite unobserved and undisturbed. So I think looking at that video of the sheep giving birth, you can see that the sheep has all of those things. She's safe. She's in her familiar space. She tucks herself away in the corner. She feels unobserved because it's nighttime. Their farmers aren't around and so on. And she's just allowed to do her thing. And then we look at how women give birth. And, you start off a labour. If you go into spontaneous labour, you will start off at home. But then what will happen? You'll very quickly move into a hospital or you'll transfer somewhere. And it's so, so common that a woman will transfer sometimes a little too early, but regardless, you take a woman, a mammal, remember, out of their safe, familiar environment. So let's say their bedroom at night, it's cozy, the oxytocin's flowing. Suddenly, bright lights, cars, traffic, an unfamiliar setting. This is why continuity of care is brilliant, because you know who you're going to see on the day, as opposed to, I don't know who I'm going to get. Am I going to get a really happy midwife today or someone not? Am I going to get, you just don't know. There are so many unknowns. And so then we wonder why, for so many women, when they arrive at hospital, labour stops. Everything stops. There's a complete stall in labour. Why? Because adrenaline rises. And one thing we've been talking about is that the hormones oxytocin and adrenaline, you can't produce both at the same time. So adrenaline's going to rise because of this change in environment, because you transfer from familiarity to suddenly an unfamiliar space with bright lights and with unknown people. And then, of course, you get more adrenaline, because adrenaline is there to say, whoa, where are we going? Do we know what we're doing? And that's why I said to you, Jen, make sure you go up the lift, you go through the corridor, because the more your brain knows what to expect, the less likely the adrenaline is then to spike as you get out the car, as you walk through the lift and so on. So, that's the kind of key hormone is oxytocin. And then for mammals, they can generally, they will naturally and instinctively, they'll go and find their oxytocin rich space. So for cats, it's often kind of like down the back of the sofa, in a little nook and cranny in the living room. And it's funny, I've taught many vets actually over the years who've always said, if we interfere with a cat in labour, it's a disaster and we've got to give her an epidural.
Wow.
Wow.
So yeah, cats can have epidurals too. And it's all about, it comes back to a mammal needs to feel safe, relaxed, unobserved and undisturbed. And back to your point, Jen, that doesn't mean that a hospital birth is not the place for you, because actually for Jen, where Jen's going to feel safe, relaxed, unobserved and undisturbed, is actually starting off labour at home and then going to the hospital to be with her known care provider. And that's for you where exactly what you're planning, where those hormones are going to flow. So it's really important, I think, for each individual person to think, what's right for me? So like for me as a person, going to a labour ward, as I told you, someone who was like needle phobic was my absolute worst nightmare and was not going to be the right place for me to see all the machinery. But equally, in all my years of teaching, I've worked with many women who feel really, really reassured and safe by doctors, machinery, all the stuff being there. And that allows them to like just release and let go and therefore labour effectively. So it is absolutely, Jen, as you did yourself, they're like stepping back from all of the noise and going, what's right for me
Mm-hmm.
and where is right for me. And I think once you have an understanding of the hormones that are really necessary, that are going to be playing, that are going to be there to take you into your birthing zone, out of your everyday state, what do you need? Like, who do you need around you? What do you need around you? And where are you going to feel safe to let your body progress and take over? Because absolutely, labouring is about releasing in your head,
Mm-hmm.
and then in your heart, and then in your vagina.
That's it. Baby, I want the team, Casper, I'm going to ask you a question. I want the team to actually show this video
Of the sheep.
of the sheep having labor, because I feel like it's, what the reason why I wanted to have this show is, if you know anyone that is pregnant or going into labor, please send this episode to them, because I think it's going to help them tremendously. As we're playing this video, baby, what happened to you, or what did you feel, or why did you appreciate, or this video? Like, what did you learn from it?
Yeah, I was gonna add that the biggest light bulb moment with the sheep video was when you said, so what's the difference between you and the sheep if the hormones are the same? And it's obviously the mind. As our evolved human cells, our minds are so active. So really, it helped me to even more reinstate, where am I going to feel the most safe to let my mind go? So it made me think of Journey again, because you're not going to go into central London on Oxford Circus, think of like the craziest environment, and drink a cup of ayahuasca, are you? Right. You would feel so disoriented, unsafe.
What if the cops come?
Well, just like the paranoia. No, but seriously, all of that.
For sure.
Even when you hear people talk about having like a bad trip on mushrooms, well, where were you when you took them?
Yeah.
Were you in a club where you actually didn't feel very safe?
And what was the intention?
What was the intention? All of that. Anyway, we don't need to go down that route, but it's the same thing. It's like, where will I feel the most safe to let my conscious mind leave?
Yeah.
And that's the thing, Jen, is that, what is the difference between you and the sheep? There's only one difference, and it's you have the ability to doubt yourself and giving birth.
Yeah.
A sheep can't doubt her ability to give birth because she doesn't have cognition. She doesn't have that conscious part of the brain. And absolutely, like as we've discussed, birth is all about letting go of the thinking part of the brain, which is really hard for humans to do because we put our conscious brain on such a pedestal, don't we?
Yeah.
You have your job, you have language, you have where you are in the world, society, but because of, largely often, when we think, our conscious brain. But actually the subconscious is so, so powerful. And that's one of my absolute passions, is people understanding that, look at your everyday thoughts, habits, actions. 95% of it happens in the subconscious part of the brain, not your conscious. But it's really hard because we have this conscious brain on the pedestal to actually go, oh, right, I need to actually really see what's in my subconscious here. And then realize that, it is my ability to stay in my conscious and work out all of the what ifs and everything that could go wrong that could lead me to have a more difficult experience. And that's not anyone's fault. That's actually everyone's brain. If anyone is listening to this and thinking, oh, well, I'm definitely thinking about what could go wrong, that's your brain doing its job. That is your brain trying to keep you safe. Yeah. And that's the brain's primal job. So, of course, we want everyone to be safe, but what we've got to understand is that if you just have heard kind of some horror stories from friends over the years and you've just seen birth on TV, then your subconscious brain has a kind of a wrong picture, essentially, of what birth can look like. If, especially, you are a healthy mum having a healthy baby, then it is a physiological event. And then it's about you kind of rewinding and going, okay, so how can I best prepare for this event? And what do I need to do? And that's for me where knowledge is power, because when you understand, these hormones, the oxytocin is going to really, really increase, but also the endorphins are going to really rise in the body. Now, endorphins, if you break down that word, it means endogenous morphine. So endorphins are like your nature's strongest painkillers, and they linger around in the blood for a long, long time, up to 21 hours. And your endorphins are what alter your state of consciousness. But I think you can go two ways, can't you? You can either embrace those endorphins and learn how to work with them and learn how to optimize them. And that's where we've done, Jen, all of the massage and the aromatherapy and all the things we know can actually boost your endorphins. Or you can not really understand them, but then as they increase in the brain, and let's say this is someone who hasn't done any kind of real birth preparation, whether it's hypnobirthing or not, as those endorphins increase, it can therefore become quite scary for that person that they're kind of switching off and they can't even talk properly. But that's the point of the hormones. So it comes back to this whole conscious birth. And
Sure.
yeah, we've got to educate the conscious birth in pregnancy to then let it go quiet in labor. And that's when the magic happens, because then birth will happen.
Hey, thanks for watching this week's episode of The Higher Self. The reality is if you're watching this show, it's because you are searching for more, and you know deep within your heart and soul that there is more potential from your life. Maybe you desire true financial abundance and freedom. Maybe you desire to heal the fragmented parts of you. Or maybe you desire to attract the relationship of your dreams and be in a relationship with passion and true love. Whatever the case may be, that is what we specialize in. We specialize in helping you and guiding you to healing the fragmented parts of your life that have created these stories in your mind that keep you from living the life of your dreams. If you want to find out how we can guide you in that process, my mastermind Inner Circle does just that. It's a group of like-minded individuals that is wanting the absolute best out of life and will not settle for anything less. We get together 4 times a year in person and twice a month online. If you're in a place in your life where you're ready to discover your truest potential, then Inner Circle is for you. Message us the word Inner Circle right now on Instagram or Facebook at Danny Morel. Our team will message you back and begin to share with you the details about what it would take for you to join our Inner Circle. Message us the words Inner Circle right now.
Mm-hmm.
And to that point, Elise, one of the things that I think helped us both is really understanding, like, number one, women are made for this. You know, I feel like in today's day and age, so many doctors are like disempowering women.
It's
you
kind of
know?
seen like as a disease.
It really is. Like if it's some bad thing. And, you know, I can only imagine, because I remember what it was like when we were younger. And I really want to speak to like younger parents who are going into this like for the first time. But the way I see it, it's like you're allowing, or because you don't know, your power to be given to these people or these group of people, obviously because you want to be safe and you want to keep your baby safe. And so what I want to speak to right now is, could you just explain to us, like, some of the most beautiful things you did was like, you know, and then when that happens, this hormone kicks off, and then your uterus goes up, and then it pushes down, and then the vagina opens, and it was like just this beautiful way of explaining. Because when you know what's going to happen, you're less afraid of it.
Totally.
Yeah, so what happens in a woman's body, which is beautiful, which is what she's made for, you know?
So what will happen is that when a baby is ready, what we know about what initiates labor is that it's the baby. So what we know is that the baby, when he or she is ready, is going to release a protein, which is called fibronectins. And fibronectins is a protein that is released when the lungs are mature. So when that protein is released, then Jen's brain is going to get a signal to say, oh, okay, right, this baby's getting ready. Let's start preparing Jen's body, the body now, to actually let the baby come out.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it's quite a gradual process, and it's not just fibronectins. There are loads of other hormones as well. So we've got prostaglandins, we've got estrogen, we've got lots of other hormones kind of gradually changing, but it's absolutely the baby that we know that initiates this process of change inside the mother's body. So then what happens is, of course, the baby is in the uterus, and at the bottom of the uterus, you've got your cervix. So the cervix it's often called the neck of the womb. It's the entrance to the womb, the uterus, same thing. I will just use uterus because that is the name of the muscle. And labour, if we strip it all right back, is exercise. It's the exercising of the uterus muscle. So when the baby is physiologically ready, the baby's going to start releasing the fibronectins. We're also going to receive eustress coming from the baby as well, which is like a healthy stress. And so the baby is signaling to Jen's body, essentially, Mama, I'm ready. I'm getting ready to come. So then Jen's body is going to respond by gradually, for most women, bringing the cervix forward. So the cervix, if you imagine it like a gatekeeper, or I like to imagine, if anyone's here is quite visual, if you imagine a bottle of wine and you've got the neck of a bottle of wine and then you've got the cork. So that little neck is like the cervix, and the cork would be the mucus plug, which kind of is the stopper in the cervix, and that's holding everything in pregnancy. And your cervix, that entrance in pregnancy, is going to be pointing towards the bottom, and then it comes forward and it softens and it thins out in preparation to open. And that whole phase, it's often called the latent phase of labour, but I personally don't really love to call it the latent phase of labour, because it's kind of pre-labour. It's a prerequisite for before labour can begin. So you've got the cervix coming forward, softening out, thinning, and then once that has happened, it's going to start to open. And this is a massive journey of change that this cervix goes on, this entrance to the uterus, where its whole job for 9 months has been to hold in this baby, to stay shut,
Right.
to point towards Jen's bottom, so that if anyone was to try and find it, it's like up in your tonsils, Jen. It's like, no, I am not ready. I'm not open. But actually, once the baby signaled, I'm ready, that's the first thing that's going to start to happen. So the cervix draws forward, it softens, it thins.
And you said it's like Krispy Kreme donut to crepe.
That's the one. Exactly. So it's going to completely transform in texture. And we all love a food analogy, don't we? And so once you've got this thinned out, soft, stretchy cervix, which has come forward, so it's kind of, more in line with the vagina, then the pressure from the baby's head is going to increase the levels of the prostaglandins, which is this softening hormone, and it's going to just increase the production of your hormones as well, Jen, to say, oh, okay, we're almost ready to actually start the opening. And then the opening, the actual labouring, is going to begin when that threshold is right, Jen, in the maternal brain. So what we know is that oxytocin, this really important hormone, which I've spoken about a lot, it increases in quantity as the woman nears labour. And then there's going to reach a day where suddenly that threshold is crossed, and then there's enough oxytocin being pulsated from the pituitary gland in the brain into the bloodstream, which is going to connect to those receptor sites on the uterine muscle, and then the muscle is going to start to contract, and it's those contractions which cause the opening. So then if you've got this soft, flimsy cervix, which is hopefully the case because it's softened and thinned out and so on in preparation for labour, then with the baby in a good position, baby's head pressing on that cervix is going to open. And so then we go through the kind of early and established phase of labour, which is all about the opening. So that's where a woman's cervix will go from kind of being, of course, closed. As it softens and thins, it will get to kind of, 1 to 2 centimetres. The opening really begins from about 3 centimetres kind of open until you get to fully dilated. It's often called 10 centimetres, but I prefer to speak to fully dilated because, depending on the size of your baby's head, Jen, fully dilated for you might be 8 centimetres, it might be 12. Mm-hmm. So it's going to be slightly variable. And then once you're fully dilated, that means your cervix is fully open around the baby's head. The best way to imagine it actually is imagine a polo neck jumper. So your baby is kind of pulling that jumper over her head so that she's free. And then once her head is actually out of the cervix, she's going to just continue to move down through the stations of your pelvis until she reaches the top of your birth canal. And from that point onwards, your uterus is so, so incredible, because your uterus is going to go from working to open up your cervix in the first stage of labour to then suddenly this thick band of muscle, which has been created during the early stage of labour, is then there. It's called the fundus, to then push your baby down and out. So your cervix, your uterus, the whole of the physiology, it goes on this massive, massive transformation. And so, of course, sometimes it can take a bit of time. And that's where, when it's a first labour, it can be a little bit longer because the muscle memory isn't there. And I'm sure you've heard about second labours, which tend to just run away. And that's because there's muscle memory there, depending on how long you've had between your babies.
Mm-hmm.
And then you've got baby in the birth canal, so at the top of the vagina, and then the uterus is going to be working to push the baby down. But also, as we talked about earlier, once the baby's head is in the vagina, is in the birth canal, you've also got a reflex there called the natural expulsive reflex. So it's the same reflex that lines our bottoms when we need to do a poo, for example, or that we also have in the throat if we've eaten something dodgy and we need to be sick. We've got other natural expulsive reflexes. And I think what a lot of women don't know is that there's one in the vagina as well. And when a baby's head is there, that reflex switches on to help to bring the baby down, to kind of, push her out, him out. And yeah, I think that's it in a nutshell. Did I miss anything, Danny?
I think it was good. No, that was it.
I think also one thing you explained to us as well that helped me, because when I'm working out or I'm doing yoga or whatever it is, I like to know exactly what's going on inside my body, because then I can really connect with it, like a mind muscle connection. And the way you spoke about how the uterus is like lifting up and then also open.
Yeah, totally. So your uterus is a big muscle. And it's a big muscle that's made up of different layers of muscle. So you've got the outer layer of muscle, which kind of stems from the top of the belly all the way over and down. You've got a middle layer of muscle, but we won't worry about that one for now because it doesn't do so much in labour. But you've also got an inner layer of muscle, which is these dense, circular, kind of horizontal muscle fibres. And labour, it is the exercising of those two layers of muscle. So, where we hear contraction, that word contraction, it's quite a harsh word. And we think about tensing and tightening, don't we? And making smaller. And what I would love everyone to know is that, yes, whilst one layer of the muscle is contracting, that's the outer layer of the muscle, is going to be contracting, tensing, drawing up. That's in order to soften and open the inner layer of the muscle. And so where we were kind of pairing up the mind-body connection, and what I do through hypnobirthing is help women and their partners to understand that we don't want to focus on the tensing. We want to focus on the opening that is going on at the same time. So that is that absolute mind-body connection. And that's where we've got, Jen, your visualizations to work with for when you are labouring, so that whilst your muscle is kind of going up and open, if anyone's watching this, you can see what I'm doing with my hand, up and open, you are thinking up and open in your mind too. Whereas if you haven't had that prep, I'm sure you focus on the pain.
You just think pain.
Yeah.
You don't think of anything else.
Absolutely.
It's just like, this is what I'm experiencing.
To speak to this, one of the most incredible things, first off, in hearing this, I hope you guys see, especially for our beautiful women that are listening, it sounds as though your body is just like, it's going to do its thing and the baby is going to come out, right?
In most cases, absolutely.
In most cases. And one of the things that we learned from you is that, even women who are in a coma can give birth. Could that profound?
Yeah, it was. That was something I learned on my initial training. So I have to dig out exactly the case studies. But it's that giving birth is such a physiological functioning, and it speaks to the fact that it's not something you can't think yourself into labour. In fact, you can think yourself out of labour, but you cannot think yourself into it. So it happens in the subconscious part of the brain. So where women have tragically been in car accidents and whilst pregnant and been in comas, there have been a few cases where they have given birth whilst unconscious. Why? Because when that baby has reached full maturity, and, thank goodness these women have been saved and kept alive, and hopefully all these women who we've read about were all well, but their bodies, it continues to grow the baby. So then with some assistance with positioning put on their side and so on, the body will open and then expel the baby.
Beautiful.
Birth the baby.
That's incredible.
It's magical.
Because that's just even more evidence for us to go, just move out the way.
Don't fight
mind.
it. Don't fight it.
Don't fight
Yeah.
it.
But baby, it's like when people are going into a journey, we tell them, what should I do? Just surrender.
Yeah.
That's what that reminds me of. It's like
Completely.
if you I'm not a woman, ladies. I'm not mansplaining. I'm not mansplaining right now, but this is from my heart because I want this, the world to see how beautiful this can be, If you don't go into it from a perspective of fear and instead tap into your power and your mind's ability to like calm yourself and breathe, right? Which is why we say meditate and yoga and breathing, because it helps you for these moments. And just like in ceremony with the medicine, if you could just surrender to it, right? And instead of fighting it, like go into it and know that you're made to give birth, I think it will create a much more beautiful experience, And my final question, though you may have some, do you have any?
No.
No? My final question, and this was big, it's like, as a man now, 2 more questions. As a man, right? I feel so prepared for this that even if her labor was like 30 minutes and it popped out, like I asked you, I want to know how to catch it. I want to know, as a matter of fact, I will be the one that catches the baby. I don't want anybody else to catch the baby. But, in your experience, what could men do, right? So for you men and you partners listening, what could men do for their women to help them feel more safe?
So, great question. First of all, understand her needs. So understand, the needs of a woman in labor. So the fact that she needs to feel safe, relaxed, unobserved, private, but then also tailor that to your particular partner and go, so what does that mean to you? And so like, as you guys did for Jen, it's like, for Jen, that means starting labor at home and then transferring to this particular place and having a doula and having this preparation and so on. So it's about the guys understanding the needs of a woman in labor, but then the other thing, which I think is so important and is what I'm so passionate about, is about the birth partner or partners, if you have a doula as well, for example, in being, not doing. So actually, when a woman is giving birth, she's in such a vulnerable state. She doesn't really want her birth partners faffing around and doing all the things and chatting to the midwives and the doctors and being all busy. She wants someone there with her, just being present so that she doesn't feel alone, that she feels safe to release into the body, because it can be a very overwhelming thing, especially if you haven't had journeys before and gone and left your thinking brain and really dropped into your body and have something take over your brain in the way that the hormones of birth really do. So it's about being, not doing necessarily, but in order to be able to confidently just be present, I believe you've got to be prepared, and that's where knowledge is power.
Yeah.
And so by having the knowledge, by, doing some childbirth prep and education, you can really get, okay, we need the answers to this. We need to make these decisions. We need to do all these conscious thinking things because we're not sheep. We are humans. And unfortunately, we do know that we are today 32 plus 4 weeks pregnant and that we've got this scan and that thing coming up. So I don't want us to go away from the reality of this is the world we live in. But I think the combination of getting the knowledge, like kind of educating the conscious brain with everything that it needs to have kind of like safety ticked off for birth, so that then you can work on that subconscious program for both the men and the women.
Sure.
Being one where everyone feels okay about labor and birth. And because, we've spoken about women having all of the fear, but it's there for men too. What does it look like for a guy, for a birth partner on TV? I can tell you, having watched all those One Born every minute episodes. By the way, I love that show. But anyway, what does the guy do? The guy is always sitting in the chair, eating a packet of crisps, making a joke, asking to puff on the gas and air. And that is therefore what then birth partners think that's their role, to just kind of basically be a spare part. And what I would say is no.
Or to get, your hand squeezed or get punched in the face or get
Yes.
yelled at.
Yes.
It's like, it doesn't have to be that way.
Totally. I've been at so many births now. I've never seen a woman yell at her partner. It doesn't happen. It certainly doesn't happen in the way where I work with my clients and we prepare together, because everyone's on board. Everyone is a team. And, actually the birth partner is not a spare part. If anything, if you're not working with a doula, for example, the birth partner is the one person who is providing the continuity of care. And what every single piece of research into how can we improve women's birth experiences, how can we improve outcomes, how can we lower birth trauma, which is currently at a third of women in the UK come out with birth trauma, all points to continuity of care. So in the current medical system, we're unable to provide that in the NHS, for example. For most women, they don't get continuity. So therefore, who is continuity? The birth partner. Yeah, so that's where I would say it's not just all over to the woman and, well, I'll just be there and, no, like you've got to take control. And yeah, one of the key things I get birth partners to do together, for example, is as simple as, of course, attend the classes together, but pack the bags together.
Yeah.
So that in labour, if Jen says, Danny, can I have a flannel? You're not going, what? Washcloth. But
we haven't done that yet.
Yeah.
We need to go home and show you where everything's packed.
But the
Totally.
beautiful
If
thing is
anyone's
that-
going to pack it should be Danny.
Yeah. Well, the beautiful thing is that she's so organized. She got these little baggies and it's like toiletries and like PJs and like nappies for the baby. Nappies for you American is diapers, by the way. I'm learning all these terminologies. But, I want to end, and then I actually want you to just, share some of your thoughts and feelings about this. But, there's so many, before I say this, for the men, I can tell you this because I've experienced this like pre and after like consciousness/awakening. Who I was in previous labor experiences was overly excited, overly anxious, overly dramatic, calling everybody, like making noise about it, getting everybody excited. And I can only imagine, my poor ex, like not feeling safe. Your job is to hold space. And that means that you got to start practicing within yourself how to stay cool, calm, and collective no matter what happens. And that's why I asked you the question today, what happens if the baby comes out, like at the house? I want to know how to catch it. I want to know how to clamp the cord. I want to know how to do all of these things.
What did you learn about the cord, Danny?
Well, that is the most I want to share, guys, that, it's like, it's so beautiful and yet so sad that like we visualize and we are taught that we have to cut the cord right away. And yet what you've shown us is that that's kind of like the worst thing to do, because the placenta is still feeding the baby all of the nutrients, right? All of the oxygen. And so you actually don't cut the cord, you wait. And you wait until the cord is 100% white. And if that means that you're flopping around with a baby and an umbilical cord and a placenta, then that's what that means. Don't be freaked out about it. This is the beauty of life, The second thing that is so important to us as a couple, I believe, is that, the medical system causes you to, when the baby is born, they literally take the baby from you. They weigh the baby, they wash the baby, they scrub the baby, they measure the baby. We're not allowing any of this to happen for at least an hour. This is part of our birth plan because we don't want, just think about this. The little baby is in your womb. It's nice and safe. It's comfortable. It's relaxing. It's chilling. It's kicking. And all of a sudden it's born and there's these strange humans, which by the way, strange energy. I don't know who they are, with strange lights. And they're grabbing the baby and tossing and turning and that could be dramatic and that could cause fear in and of itself. So my message to young parents is, especially if this is your first time, know that you don't have to cut the umbilical cord right away. Know that you could say to the doctors, you're not going to wash the baby. You're not going to measure the baby for at least an hour.
And
know that you have the right, and prioritize skin to skin. And let that baby just sit with you, even if they're messy or there's blood. So what? This is called life, especially for you, man. Like man up and be ready for this process. And more than anything, just know that you have a voice, right? and that you're a team, that you and your partner are a team, and you should only come into the space of labor if there's going to be doctors involved, knowing that you call the shots, it's your plan, and they're only there to support what you have decided versus giving your power away and allowing them to decide everything for you.
Mm-hmm.
Casper, that's a fucking clip.
Preach. Amen.
Amen. Baby, what have you learned through all this?
So much. I wouldn't even know where to start. I've learned so much. How to even summarize. I think just the way I started, in that I'm born to do this, and it's okay to have the confidence going in knowing my body can do this. This is what women can do, and there's nothing to fear. There's nothing that's like medical or scary about it. It's birth. It's beautiful. It's designed that way. Mm. And I think that's just allowed me to let go of all the mind chatter about it. And it's true. It's like what we said the other day. It's true that I've never done this before. So I'm allowed to feel like, do you know what? You're right. There is a lot of unknown going into this. But every time in the past I've dealt with unknowns in life, I've dealt just fine. And I'm capable of dealing with unknowns. And that's cool too. So yeah, just knowing that birth is and can be and has the potential to be the most beautiful experience of life. Like, we're bringing life into this world. What could be more beautiful? And I think you said after the first session, like, this is a day you can enjoy. You go into it thinking this is going to be the scariest day of my whole life. Like,
and that's what you get.
That's what you attract.
That's what you receive.
And I'm thinking, I'm excited.
Yeah.
There's part of me, I'm honestly saying, that's quite excited.
Good.
Let's see what's all the fuss about. I'm so excited to like pull on all the tools and see what happens.
Totally, Jen, because you're ready. Because you're ready. You've done the work. And, you know, birth can be and is designed to be a safe and empowering experience. And especially when you can just drop into your body and let your body do its thing and work with it with all of the tools that we've kind of, you know, gathered up through your pregnancy and put them in your metaphorical toolbox.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you've got so many tools to draw upon in combination with really good knowledge. So you know what's kind of in store for you, plus really good support. And then a great medical team as well, should the need arise for them. So if you look at the kind of ingredients of what kind of makes a positive birth, you've got everything there.
Yeah.
And then it's about then optimizing your physiology working as well as it possibly can, which again is everything that you're doing. So you're doing everything you can do. And then it comes back to this piece of surrendering and letting go and trusting and believing that you're going to have the birth that is absolutely right for you, for your baby. And you've got everything you need within you.
Amen.
To cope with the labour. Mm-hmm. And it's this thing, Jen, that which you kind of just said there, which is labour, contractions. It's not something happening to you. It is you.
That's my favourite affirmation. It's not something external, like this is happening to me. This is me.
It's your body.
It's not outside. So that helps you to unify with the whole process.
And if you listen, guys, to what we teach and what we speak about, like, that's the differences in life as well. If you come at life from the perspective of this is happening to me, right? It's you're kind of like in that victim energy, you know, versus when you step into your power and you step into creator energy, you say, no, this is me. Life is me. I create my experience. I am the creator of it all. And you can take that same energy into labor. Absolutely.
I just want to add one more thing, which is, and I know both of you have now said this, as I was leaving the house the other day, Mum said to me, wow, you are going into this birth with so much knowledge. I wish I went into my births with this much knowledge. And I think that is being the key to everything.
Yeah.
Just take the power back yourself and educate yourself.
Yeah.
Be curious and willing to learn.
Yeah.
Definitely,
That's right.
Because it's incredible what you're going to learn.
Yeah.
It's happening to you. It's so interesting, fascinating. And then you feel so much more prepared.
Yeah.
And the more you learn, the more you realize, oh, this is me. This isn't a whole medical event. It doesn't have to be a
No.
medical event. It can be sometimes if you are higher risk, if you've got previous complications, a medical history, of course, then there are variations to that. But otherwise, it's not for the masses going to be this big medical event, procedure, emergency. And absolutely knowledge, understanding what your body's going to be doing will get you to that place of really harnessing self-trust and self-belief, which if you have that deep in your subconscious brain, means that the whole process is going to feel a lot easier. The whole experience is going to be much more pleasant, and you can enjoy it. You really can, because you're not resisting it.
Not
You are,
fighting it.
you're letting go to it. And I can honestly say that my births were super intense, and absolutely I experienced pain. I would never say that I had pain-free births. I've heard that some women have them. That wasn't my experience at all. But never at one point in my labours did I feel, oh my goodness, this pain is absolutely unmanageable. I'm really suffering here. I can't do this. That was never the message I was getting in the brain. And that's because I was experiencing a physiological pain, which is exactly what labour should be, as opposed to a pathological pain where something is wrong.
Elise, we can't, by the way, guys, she gave birth to a 10-pounder. Was it a 10-pounder?
Yeah, she sure was.
That's a massive
4.5 kilograms.
That's a big one.
A unit.
That's a unit for sure. Elise, we cannot end this episode without sharing the story about the midwife telling you that you've got 30 minutes and what your husband did and what your body and your intuition was telling you all along and what happened when you finally listened to it. Please, humans on planet Earth and even the aliens out there, listen to this. This is the power of listening to your own intuition and your own body.
Okay, so this was my first labour with my little girl Millie, and I was labouring along really nicely. Everything was going super smoothly. I was in a pool for some of the labour. Anyway, I get out the pool when I get to about fully dilated. I think to go for a pee. I'm not quite sure. But anyway, I got out the pool and then I didn't want to get back in the pool because I got a bit cold. And so I'm kind of just doing my thing, but I was really comfortable in the pool. And when I was in that pool, just bear in mind that I was kind of kneeling in the water, looking at my husband, and my two midwives were behind me, kind of assessing my progress with a mirror. So just bear in mind that I wasn't looking at their faces. They were behind me, and these were unknown midwives. I did not have continuity of care for that pregnancy. Mm-hmm. So then suddenly I'm out the pool and I'm really looking at these midwives, and bear in mind I'm now fully dilated. So my cervix is fully open. And I'm kind of going through a stage in labour called transition, which is where I'm transitioning from the opening phase into the pushing stage. And that's where naturally, just to give you the kind of context, the brain is scanning to be like, is this safe? Is this a safe place? Are these safe people to expel the baby, to birth the baby with? So I'm kind of like consciously very aware. I'm much more back in myself, back in my body. And I said to my midwife, I really feel like I need to squat. And she turned to me with that complete goodness in her heart and said, oh, honey, don't squat, you'll tear. Now, bear in mind, I didn't know I was having a 10-pound baby at that point. It had never been picked up as such in the pregnancy that she was really big. But of course, what did I hear in that moment where I've got a little bit more adrenaline in the system because my brain is kind of preparing me to actually birth the baby? Suddenly I hear, no, don't squat, you'll tear. So I had this really kind of difficult couple of hours of then what followed of my body saying to me kind of what positions I needed to get into, which was quite low to the ground, kind of moving my legs in certain ways. But I'd just been told by my care provider, don't do that. So what followed then was 90 minutes of me trying to get in the right position, feeling these pushy urges, but also feeling very intimidated, very aware that suddenly I had two women kind of looking at my vagina, whereas before I didn't have anyone. Mm-hmm. So I'm on this kind of futon-y kind of style bed that you often get in birth centres. And I'd written in my birth preferences, and this is again where prep is key. I'd written for anything that needs to be discussed with the pregnancy and the labour. Once I'm in the room, please discuss this first with James, my husband. He knows my wishes and preferences well. And so what happened then is that hospital kind of policy in the UK is that a first-time mum can have 2 hours to push. So from the onset of being deemed you're fully dilated, you can then have 2 hours and to kind of give birth by yourself. And if you haven't given birth within 2 hours, then the guideline is that you go and you transfer to the doctors, essentially to the obstetric ward, to get some medical intervention. So bear in mind, I hadn't actually been pushing for the 2 hours because I think I mentioned this to you. I had this phase of once I was fully dilated, I had this phase called the rest and be thankful, which is where I was telling my husband how much I adored him. And I was like loved up to the max on the oxytocin. I was on an oxytocin high. So bear in mind that even though they said it's been an hour and a half, we're kind of coming up to 2 hours, it had probably been about an hour that I had been actively pushing. But anyway, the deadline was coming up. The clock was ticking. And so thank goodness I'd written for anything that needs to be discussed during labour, please speak first to James, because the midwife then quietly turned to him and said, listen, she's been pushing for an hour and a half now. If she hasn't delivered this baby within about 15 minutes, we're going to need to look at a transfer up to labour ward. And my husband, he didn't say that to me. He very cleverly thought about this and he knew my needs. He knew that for me, deadlines and you're about to go to labour ward, which was still my big thing. I really didn't want to go to labour ward. I was still scared of needles and an epidural, even though I'd done all the work. He knew where I wanted to be, which was on that birth centre. And so with that knowledge, with him knowing me and my needs really well, he said to me, Elise, what position right now do you need to be in to birth this baby? And I was like, I need to get off this bed. Like, if this is not working. So I then get off the bed with the next contraction, really, really push in much more of a squatting position, kind of in like a semi-lunge position, 3 contractions there, and her head is born. And then I kind of go back onto the futon and finish birthing her. So my body had been literally, I can remember it like it was yesterday. My body was yelling at me, squat, get lower, like move your legs. Like it was so crystal clear. But then my conscious brain took over and I listened and I was like, oh no, I mustn't. And just to, for full clarification, that midwife was absolutely right that there's a much higher likelihood of tearing with squatting. So she was absolutely right. But I think the difference there is that I wasn't at the point of delivery when I felt the need to squat. I was at the point of bringing her down. Her head wasn't yet visible. And so if I'd have just listened to my body an hour and a half prior to all of that, she probably would have been born and it would have been a much smoother, easier, quicker, less adrenaline fueled second stage, because the combination of being told, no, don't do what your body's telling you to do. And also I'm looking at these 2 people and they're looking in my vagina. I felt such like stage fright and adrenaline that then what happened? My contractions went like this. They spaced out. They got really short because this whole thing about adrenaline, oxytocin was happening.
Sure.
And that for me was the biggest lesson in listen to your body and move instinctively, because yes, you can be surrounded by like the best care providers in the absolute world, but they can't feel what you're feeling inside your body and they are not experiencing it. And there is so much like that we don't even know about the mother-baby connection, but you are two humans in one body. And if you feel the need to move in a certain way, as I did, and I was very instinctive otherwise in the pregnancy, then you move. And yeah, so that was my story. And that was, again, a massive turning point for me to say, hang on a minute, we need to really educate women about understanding, like, you know, their options, the choices, what's going on, but then also in listen to your body.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Thank you for
Such
sharing
a good
that.
story.
It is. Baby,
Yeah.
you ready?
Yeah. Baby, you ready?
Yeah. I don't think not yet. I'm getting there. Elise, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having
you.
me.
Where
Thank
could
you for
people
choosing me.
find out about you and hear about you? And
So I'm on Instagram at birth_bubble. So come and follow along there.
Beautiful.
And my website, birthbubble.co. There I've got an online program for anyone who likes self-paced learning. And I also teach group hypnobirthing and birth preparation courses, and also work with couples one-on-one, and have a handful of spots for doula couples and support as well. So
Beautiful.
yeah, and I'm based at the Portland in central London. So if anyone is central London based, let me know for in person, but otherwise online and on Zoom is where I am.
And I would say worldwide, guys, wherever you are, just like send everybody to that website. Elise just has a way of like connecting real world birth principles with like consciousness, and it's just absolutely wonderful. And, you know, my final thoughts are, if you know of somebody, especially those first time parents, you know, send them this episode. I don't think I've ever asked you that, but I feel like so much trauma, you know, for both men, for both women and the baby, could be avoided if you just understand some of these basic principles that we spoke about today. And also I would say just make sure that you understand that, you know, the power was within. Spend some time doing some research, take the course, empower yourself so that you go into labor and have a beautiful experience, which it's absolutely your right to do. So that's this week's episode of The Higher Self. I hope you enjoyed it, and we will see you next week with another episode. Thanks for watching this week's episode of The Higher Self. If you heard something in this week's episode that caused you to think maybe, just maybe, there was a higher potential for your life, maybe there was a potential to earn and receive financial freedom, to attract the relationship of your dreams, or to improve your health, that's what we specialize in. We help wonderful human beings like yourself to unravel all of the limiting thoughts, feelings, and emotions that you've been living through so that you can finally tap into your life's truest potential. If you'd like to talk more about that, we invite you to join us on Instagram or Facebook and email us the word discover more. And when my team sees that, they will reach out to you, send you the details of how we could help you on your pathway to a life of abundance, fulfillment, and creating the absolute life of your dreams. Message us right now the words discover more now on Instagram or Facebook, and we'll see you soon.